Hey, welcome once again to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. How are you doing out there? Thanks for clicking, watching once again. I'm Tim Durling, always going through something from my music collection, and this time around it's a kind of a review episode. One of my favorite bands released a live album late last year. Just now getting around to reviewing it. It is this: Kansas, Leftoverture, Live and Beyond. In 2016, Kansas released their first studio album in 16 years called The Prelude Implicit. Like the album, reviewed it here. You can go back and find that episode if you like. And they went on tour to support that album, and it was also marking the 40th anniversary of their breakthrough album, Leftoverture. So they kind of did two sets. They did a set of Kansas songs, including new songs, and then they performed the entire Leftoverture album, and this documents that performance. So yeah, show you that cover once again. It's playing off the Prelude Implicit album cover slightly with the bird there. And this is on Inside Out Music. This time around it's distributed by Sony, though. It's got Sony music on here, unlike the Prelude Implicit. And so the band is the band as it has been for the last 2 or 3 years. Founding members Phil Ehart on drums and Richard Williams on guitar. Longtime bassist and vocalist Billy Greer. And returning violinist, guitarist, and background vocalist David Ragsdale. They're joined by Zach Risby on guitar and vocals, Ronnie Platt belting it out on lead vocals, also playing keyboards, and David Mannion handling the majority of the keyboards. And this is a supercharged lineup. It just seems like they've got a new shot of adrenaline. And nothing against the founding members, but Richard and Phil wanted to keep going, and other members went by the wayside. So this is Kansas 2017. Wish I could have caught this last tour. So I'm going to read you the Beyond, which is disc 1, the Beyond set list. For a longtime Kansas fan, there's some songs here that kind of jump out as, oh, I didn't know they play that. I like the fact that they start off with Icarus 2 from 2000's album Somewhere to Elsewhere. Really glad they included that. That's an overlooked album for Kansas. A lot of theirs are, but that one came out independently, and it reunited the original band, and I just thought it was really strong. And they followed up, of course, as they have done before, with the original Icarus, Born on Wings of Steel from Mask, then Point of No Return, Paradox, Journey from Maribyrnong from the first album, Lamplight Symphony from Song for America. That's a real workout. They do it on here, of course, Dust in the Wind, and then saving 3 for the end, all songs from the Prelude Implicit, great versions of Rhythm and the Spirit, Voyage of 818, and Section 60. I wish they did more of the new songs, but I can understand they have to appeal to the casual buyer. But the only drawback I could see is that there's nothing from the 80s. They just totally bypassed the 80s. I would have liked to have heard them do a song from the John Elephant era from Vinyl Confessions or Drastic Measures. The band sounds great throughout, but the new stuff just fits right in with the classic stuff. I can't say enough about the Prelude Implicit and what a great album is. Just a strong musical album, melodic, and it's got everything you could ever. If you ever liked Kansas, there's nothing not to like about that album. Now we move on to Leftoverture Live, which is kind of a no-brainer. It's the entire album plus one more song. Now, lest I just gust with praise throughout the whole thing. When I heard this, I was consternation, I think is the word, consternation. But take this with a grain of salt. So I'm a huge Kansas fan. Of course, Leftoverture kicks off with Carry On Wayward Son. And the way that they perform it here, to me, felt a little bit lacking, if I dare say that. I guess I just did. Everything is well performed, but the guitar solos aren't quite right. There's vocal inflections that aren't quite right. And you're playing to an audience where maybe this is one time someone's going to see you, and maybe the only song they know, particularly if it's a younger person, the only song they may have known from you is Carry On Wayward Son. In my opinion, I don't want them to be robots and just karaoke the thing, but attention to detail in nailing the arrangement, in my opinion, on that song in particular means more than, possibly even more than Dust in the Wind. Carry On Wayward Son is, that studio recording is so entrenched in so many minds that every little nuance of it is there, and when you don't hear it in a live setting, you're like, oh, it doesn't sound right. And it sounds fine, and the casual listener might just, what are you talking about? They did it fine. That's just me being weird, I guess. And maybe I've heard so many live versions of it that I guess this time around I was expecting a more straight ahead, basically retelling of how the studio version was. Especially where they were, essentially they were doing their own version of a classic album's live. They were performing their own album start to finish. It's just that the first song happened to be such a key song for them. Even though Dust in the Wind charted higher, I think Wayward Son has gone on to become their defining song. Even though there's no violin in it, which is weird. But anyway, The Wall I've heard several times live. You know, it's fine here. And again, like I said with Wayward Son, maybe these arrangements aren't exactly with the album, but I haven't heard these songs as many times. Most people haven't. Even if you're a big Kansas fan, you don't need to consciously go and listen to Carry On Wayward Son. You just hear it when you're out somewhere. Or if you're watching Supernatural, or if you're listening to a classic rock station, you just hear it. But The Wall sounded fine. I was more excited about some of the lesser played songs from Leftoverture, like What's on My Mind, Opus Insert, Questions of My Childhood, Cheyenne Anthem. Those all sound fine here. It's funny, Magnum Opus is really, I begin to understand now that I listen to it more and more, it really is just a jumbled piece of parts of songs, which is why the name of the album is Leftoverture. The song was almost called Leftoverture too, but it was leftover parts. But very well done, and then they encore with Portrait He Knew from Point of No Return. So do not let that throw you from buying this. It's just, again, Carry On Wayward Son. It's just such an iconic song, and anyway, enough about that. So let's look at the packaging inside of this. That's the band as it is now. Guys, if you're seeing this, don't mistake me for being overly critical. I'm just a stupid fan, a super stupid fan, or a stupid super fan, whatever you want to call it. There's the two discs there. I only got this on CD, at least so far. It's available on vinyl, but when you get into albums that are 2 CDs, that becomes records that are 4 records, and that becomes in the $80, $90 range, and that becomes, no, not for me, unfortunately. So, clips of the band there. There were some tour dates there, just a few of them. And this would look really cool on vinyl. I'm sure it does. There's a poster that includes the original Leftoverture cover. So there you have it. I mean, I hope this band comes back and does another studio album sooner than later. I hope it's, you know, surely it won't be another 16 years, but yeah, Prelude Implicit was great, so I hope the follow-up is good. And so yeah, that's it. Kansas, Leftoverture Live and Beyond. Highly recommended. Don't let my stupid little blurb about one song throw you off. So that's my 2 cents on it. Any Kansas fans out there, curious to hear what you think. Thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.